Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the CODESYS Feature Briefing. I'm happy to have you with us. Thanks for your interest, and I hope you will enjoy the coming presentations.
Right at the start, I would like to mention the date of the next feature briefing. We will maintain the biannual schedule, and the next date is March 18. The feature briefing will be recorded and will be available to you or your colleagues afterwards. Directly after my introduction, we will start with the content and show you the new developments around CODESYS and our agenda for the coming months. You are also welcome to send us questions. As last time, you can either ask them via the YouTube chat. However, this requires your own YouTube channel and is also publicly visible. Alternatively, you have the option of sending us an email at featurebriefing@codesys.com. This is not public. Please always give us the context of your question so that we know what you are referring to. Here is the agenda. I will not read it out in detail, but the first half is primarily about our development environments and tools. The second part will be about runtime and features. Finally, there will be a presentation on CODESYS Go, our new engineering platform, which is currently under development. As you can imagine, it will take a long time before we can offer the full range of version 3 features with Go. We will soon be entering an extended beta phase, and you will have the opportunity to try out the current state for yourself. If you don't want to wait that long, I cordially invite you to visit us at the SPS Smart Production Solutions Trade Fair in Nuremberg from November 25th to 27th. Our booth will be located in Hall 7, booth 677, as it has been for the past 2 years. A note on upcoming releases: the next Service Pack 22 is scheduled for March 24. Patches for CODESYS Essentials will continue to be released throughout the year. The current version is 3.5 Service Pack 21 Patch 3, released in the end of September, and this one will be followed by Patch 4 at the end of November. We can produce special patches and hotfixes even for older versions as a service upon customer request. There are numerous releases every month for the add-ons. We publish information about which components will receive new versions and when on our website at the address provided. Now to the Cyber Resilience Act. This new European law will come into force at the end of 2027, and CODESYS and all those who manufacture or supply relevant products in the EU will be subject to it. We are dealing with this very actively and are holding discussions with our larger customers. We feel well prepared for our flagship product, version 3, as we have established a good security process over the last years, which we intend to have certified in accordance with IEC 62443-41. We have set out our position in a white paper, which registered customers can find at the address provided on our homepage in the download area. As far as our legacy product, CODESYS version 2.3 is concerned, we have to be clear that it was not implemented in accordance with the guidelines of the Cyber Resilience Act and cannot be extended accordingly retroactively. The reasons are obvious. The technologies used are from 20 years ago, when security was not yet as advanced. A subsequent enhancement fails simply because of the increased hardware requirements. Encrypted communication, to name one example, simply cannot be implemented on the often low-performance control hardware of that time. If you would like to continue using version 2.3 after the deadline and are not yet in contact with us, please get in touch with your contact person in our sales department to explore the possibilities. Good news about IEC 27001. We have been certified since the middle of the year. Almost at the same time, we were listed by TSAX. With this admittedly great effort, we have made our organization more secure. Now our focus is back on the products and the IEC 62443. This year we are aiming for process certification, that means IEC 62443-41, and next year we would like to certify our runtime toolkit according to IEC 62443-42. As you can see, security is an extremely important topic for us. So far the general introduction. Please enjoy the upcoming presentations.
Hi, my name is Christoph Brachmann. I'm the responsible product manager for the automation platform and the CODESYS development system.
The new installer in version 2.5 makes creating and managing installations much easier. New dialogues guide you through the process. Installation configuration files act as templates. They allow identical setups to be deployed across multiple devices. You can create configurations from scratch or based on existing installations. Installation configuration files can now be compared with other setups, installations, or sandboxes. This helps identify differences and gives a clear view of the status of your installation. The focus of the new features in the CODESYS development system Service Pack 22 is on usability. Import and export of gateway settings is now possible. No more typing is necessary. When updating an existing installation to the new Service Pack, the gateway settings can be automatically transferred. Depending on the project size, opening a project can take some time. Parts of the project opening process happens in the background, allowing you to perform certain actions more quickly. A progress bar has been introduced for background loading to provide transparency on the current status. Additionally, users can decide whether background loading should take place or not. In Service Pack 22, the first milestone for customizable toolboxes will be completed. For the ST editor, the customizable toolbox is functional. Code examples can be individually saved and managed in the toolbox. Import and export toolbox contents is also possible. Furthermore, Service Pack 22 will complete the preparations for file-based storage, ensuring that working with version 3 or file-based storage projects in the CODESYS development system feels the same. My colleague, Mr. Reiter, will elaborate on file-based storage later. The already released CODESYS Safety Extension version 4.4 also focuses on usability. It is now possible to retrieve information about active safety applications at several points. This is necessary, for example, to find out the application ID usable for the CRC. In previous versions, it was not possible to use a precompiled cache in CODESYS installations with safety extension installed. From version 4.4, this is now possible again, leading to performance improvements. Additionally, several bug fixes has been solved. In the next release of the Safety Extension 4.5, the behavior of update device will be improved, reducing manual effort and minimizing the risk of errors in certain scenarios. Additionally, the output of warnings will be improved. Furthermore, bug fixes will also be implemented in this version. In the already released CFC Editor 4.5, the functionality of refactoring has been improved. In the next version of LDFBD, faulty representations of the editor will be improved. In the next version of the SFC, horizontal scrolling with the mouse will be possible. Of course, bug fixes will be carried out in all releases. In CODESYS Security Agent version 1.4, the usability for creating certificate signing requests has already been optimized to eliminate manual steps. In the next version of CODESYS Security Agent version 1.5, new online services of the runtime will be integrated. This will make certificate management faster, smoother, and easier to use. Unfortunately, we have to announce that the development of a new Iron Python interface has been discontinued due to many incompatibilities between Iron Python 2 and Iron Python 3. The effort for customers to port scripts would be huge with a little benefit. A new approach for CODESYS Go is being evaluated. Currently, we cannot provide a timeline.
Hey there, my name is Markus Haberstock. In the product management, I am responsible for the CODESYS help. In today's presentation, I'll show you the latest innovation in this area. Stay tuned.
Today, I'll give you brief updates on the ongoing projects, machine translation and CODESYS sample projects, as well as exciting information about the chatbot integration into our help portal. First, let's talk about the status of machine translation. In previous feature briefings, I have already informed you that we will be improving our machine translation. We are doing this by performing translations based on a terminology database. Today, some publications, such as the IEC editors, have already been revised and are available online. We will complete the retranslation of the entire help content next year. As you know, we are currently in the process of making all CODESYS sample projects available via our help portal. The examples that were previously available on CODESYS Forge or in the CODESYS store are now all available via the help portal. Examples included in product packages are currently being processed. We will also complete this project next year. Now for an exciting announcement. By the end of this year, we will have integrated a chatbot into our help portal. Internal tests are showing very good results. This means you will get answers to your questions much faster. Stay tuned. Those were the innovations from the documentation.
Hello, my name is Bernhard Reiter, and as part of the product management team, my main focus is on the engineering products. Accordingly, today I will show you the latest developments in the parts of the Professional Developer Edition, our compiler, and also the communication protocols. Let's get started.
Regarding our CODESYS compiler, we introduce an improvement to an already existing feature and also a completely new feature for Service Pack 22. The improvement is in our generic constant variable feature. This is already available since Service Pack 18, and on the right side you can see a small screenshot of what this feature exactly is. So it gives you the possibility to create a function block where you can add a declaration, predefine some constants, which gives you more flexibility to configure a function block. So far it was only possible to pass only the value of the constant to this generic constant variables, but you could not write the full name of the constant you're passing the value for. This is now or will be a new functionality in Service Pack 22 that you can also in the declaration, as you can see in the small example, write the full name of the constant as well as the value you are passing to it. This in general helps to improve the readability and understandability of such code because you then know exactly which constant and what value is affected by it. The completely new feature for Service Pack 22 will be the method overloading. As you can see here in the screenshot, this means that you will have the possibility to add to one function block several methods with the same name, with only in their available parameter names, number and types as a difference. This allows to create a lot more like flexible and easier readable and usable APIs for function blocks and for libraries. Because like in this example with the logger string, as you can see, you just have one write method now where you can pass a string or an integer variable. And in the past, before this feature, you would have to create like a write string, write int, and write real method. So this really helps to make the usability and understandability of such APIs a lot simpler in the future. During the development of this feature, it turned out that it would be a lot of effort to introduce the possibility to have objects, several objects with the same name and just different parameters in the version 3 desktop environment. But at the same time, we wanted to make this feature available to our customers as soon as possible. So we decided to do a compromise here. For creating libraries with overloaded methods, you will have to use the CODESYS Go development environment in the future. The advantage is that there we have a different format for the files, and we'll have the possibility to write a method or a function block with all its methods and also the method overloadings directly into a file as plain structured text. You can then save this library or this files as a library in CODESYS Go and have the possibility to use these libraries in the CODESYS version 3 desktop environment. There you will, as you have already seen in the screenshots I showed before, see this method overloading, and of course also all our features like the smart coding, then IntelliSense, and of course the compiler itself will support the method overloading, and so you will be able to completely use such libraries in version 3 without any restrictions, but for creating them you will have to use the CODESYS Go environment. This was already the short tease and introduction for the new compiler features we will make available with our next major release of Service Pack 22 in the beginning of next year. Thanks for your attention. Regarding the Professional Developer Edition, our focus is still the development and release of the file-based storage for Service Pack 22. But I will also talk about some news regarding the usage of AIs for programming in CODESYS. But first I want to talk about the improvements in the Professional Developer Edition we did regarding the CI workflow capability. The static analysis version 5.1 was already released in the first half of the year, and the big news there is the support of a standardized analysis result format, which allows the easy execution and also interpretation and display of the results in the CI workflow. For the test manager, we are working on the ability to execute the test scripts also in the no UI mode of the CODESYS engineering system. But this will also require Service Pack 22 for it to work. Also, please note that this still means that your test scripts or the actions you are executing should not trigger UI dialogues or elements, or if they do, they should also be handled by the test script in an automatic way and not require any kind of user interaction, of course. The preview release of the CODESYS file-based storage with the version 0.9 was made available as planned in June this year, and our users who have a professional developer subscription can download and test this version. As mentioned, this version is not feature complete and should only be used for evaluation purposes and to understand how the new format will look like, but not yet for productive usage. We already know that we will introduce breaking changes in the version 1.0, which will be released with Service Pack 22 or shortly thereafter. And these breaking changes are due to the fact that we want to further improve the readability of structured text storage and reduce the metadata required and stored in the files. On top of the file-based storage, we're also working on the Git integration version 2.0. This is a major version change which will use the file-based storage directly for the Git integration and not rely anymore on a non-human readable JSON-based shadow copy of the project. Another big change will be that we remove this limitation that every CODESYS project needs to be stored in its own Git repository, but instead now several projects can be stored in one repository. Also, this is not limited to CODESYS projects, but any kind of additional files are allowed to be in these Git repositories in the future. Still, the main limitation of CODESYS itself, that you can only work with one project at a time, cannot be removed this easily. So we try to make it as easy as possible to work with several projects in one repository when doing merges or diffs from inside CODESYS. But of course, certain limitations will still apply in the future as well. The Git version 1 and version 2 repository format has such big differences that it will not be possible to simply migrate from Git version 1 to Git version 2. So switching to Git version 2 will require that you must convert your project as well to the file-based storage format, and you will have to start a new repository when doing this migration. Also, the Git version 1, of course, will not support the file-based storage format. A parallel usage of Git version 1 and version 2 in one installation will not be possible, but still you can continue to use Git version 1 with new releases of the CODESYS Service Pack 22 and future versions as well. And you can create parallel installations using our CODESYS installer with the different versions of Git, so that you basically can choose your own pace of migrating your projects from Git version 1 to Git version 2. As already mentioned in the beginning of the presentation, we want to enable our users the possibility to use AI and large language models to help them programming with CODESYS. We will approach this by using or implementing the so-called Model Context Protocol in CODESYS, which exposes a certain set of tools to a large language model and AIs with which they can interact in a predefined and standardized way. So here, for example, you can see in the Cloud Desktop tool how such a set of tools for CODESYS might look like. It gives you the capability to connect any large language model which supports the Model Context Protocol to CODESYS. So you have the freedom to choose the model which is best suited to your requirements and needs to connect it to CODESYS. It also has the advantage that you can easily switch to a better model once new versions of this model appear in the future, or change your provider and even host and execute local models. So this is like completely your choice and freedom. Supporting the Model Context Protocol will be its own add-on as part of the Professional Developer Edition, but it will also have requirements to Service Pack 22 of CODESYS. So we plan to release it based on Service Pack 22 roughly until mid of 2026. Let me know if you have questions regarding these topics. Regarding our communication features, I have news in several areas. First of all, I want to talk about OPC UA. In May, we successfully finished certification of the embedded server profile. The certification was done based on Service Pack 21 and the communication add-on in version 4.6, which was already released in April. About the specific news and changes in this version, I already talked about in the previous feature briefings. A new feature for OPC UA server is the possibility to create a node-set file. This file is especially useful for offline engineering use cases where you don't want or you cannot browse our server live to get the information model and namespace and objects contained in it, but where you need to configure your client based on this offline node-set file. There will be two modes of how this file can be created. If you have an engineering system version smaller than Service Pack 22, then you need to download the application to the actual PLC and can then connect with the engineering system to create this file. If you have an engineering system greater than Service Pack 22, then you can use the embedded simulation in the engineering system to create the file, and you don't need to download the application to an actual PLC anymore. Then, of course, also the workflow from inside the engineering system will be optimized so that less clicks are necessary to create a file. Also, this file can be created specifically for each configuration or editor in your CODESYS project. So for each symbol set or OPC UA information model object, you can create a file which only contains the specific variables and objects from that specific configuration. This helps to keep the file small and focused to your specific use case for your client. This feature will be released with Communication Add-on 4.7 and, as mentioned, will behave differently depending on the actual engineering system version you're installing the add-on on. Regarding the OPC server redundancy, it has to be further delayed. Originally, it was planned for Service Pack 21 already. We had to delay it back then for Service Pack 22, but it still turns out that it's tightly coupled with the PLC redundancy feature and requires more new features and implementations in this base part of the system before we can actually completely implement it in the OPC server. So the feature is postponed for another year yet. For the data sources, we will implement an online change support. This will not only be available for the OPC data source, but in general for all the data sources we support. The online change will be available for the most common use cases where you add or remove data sources from the project. But changing the set of subscribed variables from the server is not supported. So adding a new variable from the server side or removing them still needs to be done by doing a download. The availability of the feature is initially limited to our device manufacturers before we will make it available to our store customers later on as well. Finally, I want to talk about DNP3, where we are working on completing the level 1 support of our implementation. This specifically means adding support for more additional data types and also the unsolicited responses and events. But also this new version or major version 2.0 will also support the so-called master functionality. So our CODESYS PLC can now not only be an outstation, but can also act as a master. The release is estimated for the third quarter and will be available in the next month or two. With this, I completed the overview of my topics. Thank you for your attention.
Hello, my name is Ulf Schünemann. I'm Product Manager of Application Products. Let us have a quick look at our latest innovations.
There are news about the Application Composer, base libraries, and application-based communication. We released version 4.4 of the Application Composer in September. The Composer is an add-on for the easy no-code generation of tailored applications for modular machines. Complete applications with I/O layer, visualization, tasks, alarms, traces, and so on are generated completely. A Composer module is a multimodal unit combining logic, I/O, visualization, and so on. For the successful introduction of modular development in your company, please contact sales. We can also offer consulting and training. The new version changed the license model. It is based on the machine size and the granularity of the variation points now. A workspace subscription license exists in 4 performance classes, S, M, L, and XL. You can now purchase and automatically renew the license through the CODESYS store. There's no more separate licensing package. CODESYS Application Composer single license. And there are 27 improvements and maintenance issues. The Composer works for small machines like those with 8 aggregates, stations, units, or for medium machines like 4 lines at 8 aggregates and 8 common aggregates, or even large machines like 4-part machines consisting of 6 lines and 10 aggregates each. And it works on different sizes of granularity, like a variable structure of the machine made of recurring aggregates, or alternative devices within each aggregate, and functional variants, like 5 functions or operation modes or processing steps within a device. And it makes your life easier if you get support on small machines with the Composer. And for medium machines, you really should have support to get this done. And large machines, I think you are lost without support. And when you have a variable structure of your machine, you benefit from support by the Composer. When you have alternative devices, I think you need support to get this done clearly. And if you have functional variants too, I think you are in desperate need for the composer. One can say that the amount of need for the composer depends on the number of variation points in your machine. This corresponds roughly to the number of module instances of composer modules. I've calculated the number of module instances for you. They vary between 8 and 7,000. You see some clusters of similar sizes in this two-dimensional scheme. And we can say that there are different project sizes, small, medium, large composer projects, and very large ones. And for these different sizes, we define limits, 100 instances, 500 and 2,500. And then we define performance classes for these different sizes of projects, Composer S, M, L, and XL. And the license for a workplace and a year in this subscription ranges from 350 to 2,800 euros. The base libraries are preparing for the discontinuation of the CAA libraries. They are an add-on with basic libraries useful in library development and in many applications. They contain modern successors of the CAA libraries, which are 20 years old and entering service phase next year. The next step is to make the base libraries themselves independent from these CAA libraries. And the element collections library should stop requiring its users to use the CAA FB Factory library. A first attempt with a compatible and auto-healing update, the version 4.1 released in April, was problematic because it contained unhealable incompatibilities with certain users of the element collections. So we had to revoke it. The new plan is to release a CODESYS base libraries 5.0, which has no CAA dependencies anymore and which is as most as possible compatible to base libraries 4.0. But it contains some incompatibilities for users of element collections with user-defined data types or adapted element factories. We provide for a 4-year transition period. It has effects on the users of visualization and Ethernet IP, IIoT, Composer, and so on, because their libraries are using element collections in a way which is not compatible with 5.0. We need new versions of them which are compatible with the new base libraries. But only one version of base libraries can be used in a project, so all add-ons must be compatible with base libraries 5 before updating the base libraries. And in the 4-year transition period, there will be add-ons that are compatible with the old and the new base libraries so that combinations are possible. What is the timeline for the users of the add-ons? First, we will release the add-ons in a transition version which is compatible with base libraries 4 and 5 and which is still using CAA libraries. This period allows you to use old and new add-ons and combine them arbitrarily based on base libraries 4. In Q1 next year, we will release the base libraries 5.0, and then it is possible to update to version 5.0 if one updates all the add-ons. In 2028, the add-ons will be released in the final version, which is CAA free and compatible then with base libraries 5 only. If you want to use these new add-ons, then you have to update to version 5 of the base libraries. But you can still combine older and newer versions of the add-ons starting from 26 to 2030. And then in 2030, the CAI libraries will be discontinued and the base libraries 4 become unusable and the transition versions of the add-ons also. So then you have to switch and use the newer versions of the add-ons from 28 onwards and combine them with any newer add-ons. The timeline for the direct users of the base libraries looks as follows. From the year 26 on, new projects should use the base libraries 5, and user libraries which are using the base libraries should be made compatible with the base libraries 5. And then there's a service phase for the CAA libraries, and in this time the base libraries will be maintained only in version 5 and will include further successors of CAA libraries, but there will be no updates anymore in the 5.0 branch. So if projects are needing updates of the base libraries, they need to switch to version 5. Then in 2030, when CAA libraries are discontinued, you have to switch to base libraries 5 and remove the CAA FB factories from your projects. Or you might want to archive CAA FB factory library, and then you can continue with the version 4.0. And now to the application-based communication products. There's some updates to report. First, we released CODESYS IIoT libraries in version 1.12 in May. It includes the Azure IIoT Hub via WebSocket proxies, a new weather forecast library, some maintenance issues, and the service phase for the SMS service library has begun. The CODESYS OPC UA client API is released in 1.2 in July. It contains improved diagnosis and improved handling of structures. The CODESYS OPC UA PubSub library was released in version 1.3 in October. It contains message security and an inclusion of the library requirement in the software metrics dialog.
Hello, my name is Martin Decker. I'm the product manager of the CODESYS Automation Server. I'm excited to give you an introduction to the latest developments of the Automation Server and also of what you can expect in the future.
We are starting with the Automation Server on-prem. After a lot of development and hard work, the time has finally come and we've got some great news for you. The Automation Server no longer only runs in the cloud, you can also install and run it on premises now, meaning on your own infrastructure. To allow you to test the system extensively first, a pre-release version of the Automation Server on-prem is now available. And the nice thing about it, there's only good news. Until now, the cloud version of the Automation Server has been running in the cloud hosted at Amazon Web Services. There, we at CODESYS used several VPCs, virtual private clouds, in which we operate a Kubernetes cluster with the Automation Server, maintain the database, and use the Automation Server Manager, a specially developed ops tool for the complete management of the Automation Server. In addition, we use a whole range of services provided by AWS for mail delivery, for example, DNS management or certificate management. If the Automation Server no longer runs on AWS, but on its own infrastructure, this of course means that everything previously based on AWS is no longer available. In other words, as a user, and now also as an operator, you are now finally able to and indeed required to ensure that all requirements are met. You now have the complete control over your data, the installation and the operation. As in the previous overview, this means that you run a corresponding Kubernetes cluster in which you then operate the Automation Server Manager and the Automation Server. You will also take care of persistent volumes or the necessary services and infrastructures, such as the database, the DNS management, or a mail server, for example. Here again, presented more clearly as a list, There are a number of things that are now in your hands. This gives you full control over your automation server, your data, and your infrastructure. Of course, we also provide you with everything you need to successfully install and operate the automation server. This includes in particular deployment in Kubernetes namespaces, the automation server manager for administering the automation server, and hand in hand with this, the complete on-premises package, including detailed documentation on installation and operation. The on-premises package mentioned above includes all the components you need for installation and operation, such as the appropriate container images, the Helm chart for installing the automation server manager, the complete cluster definition, including Kubernetes specifications, database schema, and configuration files, and of course, the documentation mentioned above. This gives you everything you need for the actual installation, which is carried out in two main steps. In the first step, the automation server manager is installed using Helm or Helm charts. The actual automation server is then installed with it, with the automation server manager. And to do this, you simply add a cluster definition that you receive from us to the automation server manager. And just a side note, you can also install updates later using new cluster definitions. Based on the cluster definition that you can select here, you then create a cluster and start it. All necessary deployments are included automatically. So in the cluster, you can then create one or, if desired, several automation server tenants. In other words, independent automation server instances, and then just work with them. In addition to a range of configuration options, you also have the option of easily and conveniently creating backups via the manager during operation and restoring them if necessary. And licensing is just as easy and straightforward and can be done directly in the automation server manager, where you can connect to license service and manage all existing licenses. When it comes to licensing, you will certainly also be interested in the pricing model for the automation server on-prem, which we have designed to be simple and flexible. The final price has not yet been fixed, but it will basically depend on the number of controllers you want to connect to your automation server. This means that you purchase a package with a fixed number of controllers and pay a certain amount for it. And the package is valid for 1 year and is renewed as often as you need. Of course, you can also purchase additional packages if you want to manage additional controllers. The initial validity period remains unchanged here, so it is not extended. And depending on your turnover, you will also receive corresponding discounts. Some limitations do exist. Please note that the pre-release version is intended exclusively for you to test the on-premises installation extensively. It is therefore explicitly not intended for productive operation and is limited in terms of runtime and the number of connectable controllers, although the restrictions are quite generous. If you're curious and would like to run the automation server on-prem yourself, just get in touch with us. We look forward to hearing from you. A feature that will be released with the next version in November 2025 is the file management tool. There were a couple of requirements, for example, that it should be possible to store data in a central spot on a central location. It should also be easy to exchange the data between clients, between PLCs, and between this central storage. And also multiple users should have access to it, of course, only if they are allowed to. And it shouldn't be Windows only, but it should be OS independent. So we implemented the feature, the file management, which is basically a complete file system in the automation server, so a file system in the cloud where you can create new folders, where you can transfer files to, from where you can transfer files to your client, where you can delete files, and of course it uses the permissions and user management that is already part of the automation server, so that you can share whatever you want with only the people you want to have access to it. On the other hand, the part for managing files on PLCs is still as it was before. However, it is now possible to move files, to transfer files from the central file management in the cloud to individual PLCs and vice versa. So for example, if we want to copy files from the central location in the cloud in the automation server to a PLC, just select the corresponding files, hit the start copy button, and then the progress goes on, and after everything is done, you copied successfully your files to the PLC. With this feature, we created a secure and intuitive possibility to manage files on a central location in the cloud, in the automation server, and distribute those files to all connected PLCs. It also speeds up collaboration as we have a multi-user support, and the access to those files stored there is very easy because we're again operating system independent here, because the automation server can be used with any browser. Certificate signing requests are often used when certificates should be signed by official institutions like certification authorities. In this context, there were a couple of requirements. For example, there should be a central location from which CSRs could be managed. Furthermore, it should be simple to generate those signing requests. There should be an overview of all existing certificate signing requests, an overview of the use cases for which those signing requests could be generated. And it should also be possible to generate multiple signing requests for multiple use cases and multiple PLCs at once. And of course, once the signing requests were created, it should be possible to transfer them to a client, for example. That's why already with the last version, we implemented the feature for managing signing requests, which starts with the possibility to select several PLCs and then use cases for which the signing requests should be generated. So we select this, hit the Add Signing Requests button. All the signing requests are generated and can now easily be transferred from those PLCs to a client, from where it can then be forwarded to a certification authority, for example. In addition, the automation server provides an overview of all the already available CSRs on the connected PLCs, and of course those CSRs can then be transferred as a zip file, for example, from the PLCs to a client, and of course existing signing requests can also be deleted. With this feature, we improved the whole workflow of generating signing requests on the PLC and transferring them to clients. We speeded up the whole workflow because it's now possible to generate multiple signing requests at once. And again, we're also OS independent here, as we only rely on a browser that can run on Android, on iOS, on Windows, on Linux, you name it. And I want to point out two improvements. One is about unlocking users. Whenever a user enters a wrong password too often, he is locked out for 30 minutes. Administrators can now unlock the user. There is a button which also shows in a tooltip how long the user will actually be locked out. And when the button is pushed, the user is able to log in again without having to wait for 30 minutes. Another improvement is that as of the next version, we will check the edge gateway time. The reason is that an incorrect time of the device on which the edge gateway runs leads to a failure of the connection establishment. So that's why we're checking the edge gateway time now to ensure that the connection can successfully be established between the edge gateway and the automation server. Enjoy
the new features and have fun with the following presentations.
Hi, I am Andreas Kehrer, and today I have the pleasure of presenting the latest developments in the area of runtime system, safety and licensing to you. Let's get started right away.
As part of the upcoming SP22 release, key components of the CODESYS runtime system will be further developed and hardened. The following highlights provide an overview of the most important features and planned steps. The agenda includes CODESYS redundancy, a new mechanism for consistent restoring of retains, application-based licenses, certificate handling, device user management, and last but not least, the OpenSSL update to the newest long-term stable version 3.5. Let's start with redundancy. The connection between redundant controllers has been stabilized and its performance improved through refactoring of the CMP redundancy connection IP component. Bug fixes and optimizations ensure a more robust communication. In SP22, a new interface for asynchronous data synchronization will be introduced, which is already used for file and folder synchronization. In SP23, the interface will also be used for settings, user management, and certificates. Device manufacturers and users have the options to synchronize their own data with the new interface, too. Let's go on to the consistent retains. For systems with a full file system, a new mechanism for consistently storing retained data has been developed. This is based on a double buffer system with two consistent files. Changes mark the data as dirty before they are committed, without special hardware requirements and with guaranteed consistent data availability in the event of a power failure. Since the data is only written when it is also changed, the new mechanism is very efficient. For the application-based licenses, the Weibo container now support the EWF FBWF flag, allowing the location of the license files to be freely defined, ideally for read-only file systems. So you can place the files wherever you want. A backup, of course, is then very simple, as the license files can simply be saved and restored. Another innovation is the ability to version license metric tables. This now allows us to adapt license metrics to new requirements without becoming incompatible with existing licenses or existing runtime versions. This is a very important step for the future viability of application-based licenses. For the certificates, with SP22, the IDE will now support the certificate signing requests and the certificate revocation lists. This makes handling certificates from within CODESYS possible. In the future, certificate chains and zero-touch enrollment via operating system infrastructures like IT infrastructure will follow to roll out certificates automatically and securely. The user management has been expanded to include new audit log events. A security-related fix prevents admins from automatically receiving all rights. Rights must now be explicitly granted. SP22 also effectively protects against the accidental deletion of the last admin, thus preventing complete logout from the controller. A small side note, the file format has been changed to true CSV format. Last but not least, the OpenSSL topic. A switch from the OpenSSL version 3.2, which has end of life in November this year, to the long-term stable version 3.5 will be carried out with SP22. Version 3.5 will be supported until April 2030 and offers a long-term security and stability. In the future, PLCs are expected to use the OpenSSL version of the operating system if wanted. This would ensure a more continuity in the runtime system, since the OpenSSL version matches with the operating system. Last but not least, an update to the independent release of the runtime system. There's also a status update on the independent release of the runtime system. Decoupling the runtime system from the IDE remains a strategic goal, but it has been postponed to SP23. So it will be released in the year 2027. Thank you for your attention and see you next time. In the next few minutes, I will give you an overview of the most important features in the area of CODESYS safety. Today's agenda includes 3 topics: CODESYS Safe Control Core, which is the base for the Virtual Safe Control SL, CODESYS Safety CL2, and CODESYS EtherCAT Safety for EtherCAT Safety Module, or ESM for short. Let's start with the CODESYS Safe Control Core. As mentioned, this product is crucial for the safe control of your application. Device manufacturers will be able to use the Safe Control Core as a cool toolkit to build the safe PLC based on standard hardware. Project costs and time to market are drastically reduced because TÜV approval is not required. Although additional qualifications for custom extensions are possible, they are not mandatory. New features include time provider diagnosis and time provider redundancy, which provide additional diagnostics and redundancy for the second time provider. Both ensure higher reliability and diagnostic capabilities. Additionally, the Safe Control Core will offer the FSOE master an extended external function block interface and ARM support. Through the external FB interface, device manufacturers and users can integrate their own safety functions, allowing the safe control system to be ideally adapted to their respective use case purely in software. The FSOE master and support for ARM-based devices are likely self-explanatory. Next, let's move on to the Safety CL2. We are working on a qualification kit that will help you optimize your IDE updates. Previously, the recommendation was to always use the same versions of Runtime and IDE. In future versions, device manufacturers will be able to use different versions. This means that you won't always have to perform a runtime update to use a new IDE version. Ultimately, any version of the IDE can be used and only a manageable qualification test will be necessary. This makes device manufacturers much more flexible. The CL2 runtime remains unchanged, while a new runtime interface add-on defines the interface in the IDE to the runtime. CODESYS Essentials and other add-ons can change, but the interface to the runtime remains the same. This allows compatibility between new IDE versions and existing runtime systems. Finally, there's also new information about the product CODESYS EtherCAT Safety for EtherCAT Safety Module. This product will receive a maintenance update that includes support for the latest firmware and minor performance improvements. Additionally, a few bug fixes will be implemented to further increase the stability and reliability. However, major functional enhancements are not planned. The next version is scheduled for summer 2026. Thank you for your attention. I hope this overview of CODESYS Safety was helpful. See you next time. In the area of CODESYS licensing, I'd like to introduce some noteworthy updates that will make your licensing process even more efficient. Let's start with the new CODESYS license portal. The portal serves as a central hub for all licensing related tasks. It allows you to manage your licenses, assign them to any person or department, and to update existing licenses. The portal is designed with usability in mind, offering navigation so you can complete your licensing task very efficiently. A key feature of the scripting API is the scripting API, which enables seamless integration of licensing into a production process, no matter if it's online or offline.
using custom scripts. If you have any questions about the new scripting API, feel free to reach out to us. Another highlight is the CODESYS Mass Licenser, a tool developed to simplify the licensing process for CODESYS-based devices. A new license recovery feature will allow tickets to be acknowledged during activation, making recovery much easier. We've also introduced the ability to configure licenses using license names instead of product codes, which speeds up the process and reduces the risk of errors. Additionally, there's a new configurable threshold for the number of remaining licenses. When this threshold is reached, the tool issues a console warning and can trigger a batch file, automatically initiating a license repurchase process. These new features will be released with version 1.2 of the CODESYS Mass Licenser in the last quarter of 2025. Thank you for your attention.
Welcome to the update of our CODESYS Control products. These are our user-focused runtime systems. My name is Dominik Vögel and I'm the responsible product manager. Let's get right into it.
First, I would like to talk about our news in the area of our generic runtimes for Linux x86 and ARM devices. Since version 4.15, released in April of this year, we have been supporting RPM packages, which simplifies installation and management on Red Hat systems. The next step in this direction is the planned support of the Red Hat UBI, the Universal Base Images, for our containerized runtime environments like the CODESYS Virtual Control and Virtual Safe Control. This is planned for Q1 2026, meaning version 4.19. Security is also a focus, starting with version 4.20, which is scheduled for release in the second quarter of 2026. Generic Linux-based SL runtimes will no longer have root privileges, a timely change in the direction of system security. In addition, Linux-based SL runtimes from version 4.20 onwards will support XDP on x86 systems, both for Profinet and EtherCAT. In terms of XDP, we also want to offer solutions on selected ARM systems in the future. The development team is currently researching this, and more detailed information will be provided at the next feature briefing. Let's move on to the Virtual Safe Control, our hardware-independent still-free safety solution, which was released at the beginning of this year. In addition to ProfiSafe, FSOE will also be supported in the future, which of course immediately expands the range of possible use cases significantly. The time provider component will receive improvements in usability and debugging, and in addition, the new external FB interface allows you to implement your own certified safe function blocks. All these features are planned for release in version 4.19 in the first quarter of 2026. Of course, there are also advances and innovations in many other products. Among them, we were able to solve the GPIO support issues with version 4.15 for the Raspberry Pi 5. We are also planning to release a new SL package for Weidmuller UOS devices. A release can be expected in the coming months. And there are also some news for our Windows-based runtimes. SP22 will include an Ethernet driver for the EC1000 and noticeable improvements in jitter when using EtherCAT for the RTE can be expected. In addition, I would also like to point out that the support for the 32-bit version of the RTE will be discontinued at the end of 2026. That's all for today from my side. Thank you for your attention and see you next time.
Hello, my name is Stefan Ambros. As product manager for the visualization products, I'm pleased to show you the new developments in this area today.
Version 4.9 of CODESYS Visualization will be released in November this year. Several dialog optimizations have been implemented in this version. The dialogs can be operated on a touch device using touch input and also using a connected keyboard. In addition, dialogs now automatically adjust to the client size. The position and the size of the dialog are set so that the dialog is displayed as large as possible and can be fully operated. If inputs are made using the keyboard, all key events are processed in one VisuTask cycle. This ensures that entries are processed as quickly as possible. In addition, new dialogues were developed and additional features were implemented. The keypad was expanded so that the key mapping can be switched for different languages. We provide key mapping for English, German and French. Other languages can be easily added by defining additional key mappings and register them to a global instance. Additional keys have been added to the keypad. These are displayed when you press and hold a key. This makes it easy to assign more than 2 characters to a key for certain languages. This can also be defined via the key mapping. The look and feel of dialogues can be adjusted via the visualization style. Now I would like to show you new dialogues. First, you will see the keypad in English layout. The keypad can also be used to enter a password. You can switch plain text using the I symbol. In the next image, you can see how the additional keys are displayed. All dialogues have a uniform appearance and can be operated in the same way. For example, the Enter key accepts the value in all dialogues and corresponds to the OK button. Next are the numeric numpad and the display with input restrictions. Further dialogues were developed for editing special data types. A color picker dialog can be used to adjust a color at runtime. Next, we see the dialogues for the date and time data types. The time can be set using fields for day, hour, minute and second. A dialog has been developed that makes it easy to set the time of day. It is possible to switch between 12 and 24-hour format. Next is a dialog for setting a date and a combination of date and time. Next is the dialog for number, octal number or in binary representation. We will provide an example for the new dialogs. Now I would like to show you the dialogues live. First, the keypad with the additional keys. I open it and enter some text. If I now select a different language, such as French, the keyboard opens in the French layout. For the time data types, I would like to show you how to enter the time using the TOD dialog. You can enter the hour, minute and second. Finally, we come to the additional visualization features that have been implemented. It is not always possible to process all events in a VisuTask cycle, as, for example, a button must be redrawn between a mouse down and a mouse up. However, if you know for certain that the inputs should be processed immediately, you can optionally switch this new mode on and off. For example, you may want to receive inputs from a QR code scanner as quickly as possible. It is important that the mode switch is started and stopped by the application. In addition, the key event handler interface has been extended. With each key event, it is possible to obtain the character entered. Further improvements have been made to the code size required for visualization. The code size has been reduced by approximately 20%. This not only reduces the application size, but also shortens the compile time slightly. The overlay features have also been implemented for Target Visu for some time now. For example, elements can be placed above a camera image, or a menu can be fly in smoothly. By caching objects, we were already able to achieve improvements in performance with the last version. Nevertheless, we would like to further increase performance and are confident that we will continue to succeed in doing so. Thank you for your interest.
Welcome to the update from the CODESYS Motion team. My name is Henrik Börz and I am excited to present you the latest developments.
All the new features I am presenting today were released with CODESYS Motion version 4.19. Let's get started right away. First, I'd like to introduce the updated documentation for the drives. You can find it in the SoftMotion online help under supported drives in sections of motion drives. The drives are grouped by EtherCAT and CAN, and the documentation provides an overview of supported features and additional technical notes. In addition to the online help, the documentation is still available in the library. The documentation is now integrated into the AccessRef function block, instead of being provided as a separate PDF file. The next new feature concerns axis scaling. The images show a section of the axis editor. On the left for linear axis and on the right for rotary axis. Here you can configure how increments relate to motor and gear revolutions, as well as the unit used in the application. This scaling can also be adjusted directly in the application using SMC change gearing ratio. However, calculating the numerator and denominator for this conversion is not immediately intuitive. To address this, two new function blocks have been introduced. One for rotary axis and one for linear axis. They use the same input parameters as the axis editor, which significantly simplifies configuration. Let's move on to dead time compensation for digital switching points. We'll start with an example. An axis moves from position 0 to 360 degrees. Between position 90 and 180, glue should be applied to a product. Let's look at the axis position over time. The axis moves with constant velocity from 0 to 360 degrees within 1 second. The glue gun should be activated at position 90 and deactivated at position 180. Until now, we have only looked at the set position of the axis. More important for the application is the actual position, shown in orange. The glue must not be applied until the glue nozzle has actually reached the start position. Control processes and signal processing cause every axis to lag behind the set values by a certain dead time. For the glue application, this means that the dead time must be compensated. Dead time compensation can already be implemented using existing function blocks. SMC Digital Cam Switch High Precision has a track options input. This can be used to configure on-off compensations. However, the on-off compensations are mainly designed for application-specific use cases, such as activating a glue gun 50 milliseconds before reaching a certain position. SMC Get Travel Time does not offer on-off compensations. In this case, dead time compensation must be implemented manually in the application code. Both function blocks have the new input value source, which offers a convenient way to handle dead time compensation. First, the dead time of the drive must be measured. In addition to using the trace to calculate dead time, we now offer the new function block SMC estimate dead time, which outputs the dead time in cycles. The measured dead time is then entered in the axis editor. Once the actual values are selected as the value source input, dead time is automatically compensated. Let's now switch topics and move on to CNC. Our CNC solution already included a selection of different kinematics. With CODESYS of Motion 4.19, this has been expanded. Using SMC Trafo Wrapper, kinematics from the robotics, namely from the SM3 transformation library, can now be used within CNC. This gives you additional flexibility when configuring your CNC kinematics. Now let's turn our attention to robotics. With the new CODESYS of Motion Stäubli support add-on, controlling Stäubli robots via CODESYS of Motion becomes significantly easier and more convenient. The package includes configurations for 27 different robots, 16 models from the TS2 SCARA series and 11 models from the TX2 6-axis series. The major advantage? Easy commissioning. Let's take a look at this in action. We start with a soft motion project where the EtherCAD master and the Stäubli kinematics library are already included. First, we add the robot as an EtherCAD device. In our example, the TX2 140. The device automatically includes all required axes. Each axis is fully pre-configured, including axis limits and scaling. Next, we create the axis group and select the appropriate kinematics for the same robot type. Important kinematic parameters, such as arm lengths, are already pre-configured. All that remains is to link the axis to the axis group. After logging in and loading the PDO data, the robot is ready for control. The CODESYS of Motion Stäubli support package is available free of charge in the CODESYS store. Let's continue with additional axes. Additional axes are part of the axis group, but are not part of the kinematics. Typical examples include tool axes, a robot moving on a linear rail along a production line, or external axes that position workpieces. Previously, these additional axes could only be controlled using single axis movements. Compared to that, integrating additional axes into the axis group provides several benefits. Movements are now fully synchronized, meaning the kinematic axis and additional axes start and finish their movements at the same time. In addition, multiple movements can be buffered and will automatically be executed in sequence. And finally, when blending between two robot movements with additional axes, both the movement of the kinematic axis and the additional axis are blended. All these benefits also apply to movements involving only the additional axis. Let's now look at how additional axis movements can be commanded. Each movement function block now includes a new input called additional axis. Regardless of the underlying motion type, the additional axis input can always be linked to either an absolute or relative additional axis movement. That's all it takes. The additional axis movement will now be executed in sync with the robot movement. Thank you for your attention and enjoy the new features.
My name is Hilmar Panzer and I'm Product Manager for Fieldbus Technologies. Let's get started right away.
Let us see the new functionality our Fieldbus team has implemented. CAN-FD has been implemented as a CODESYS communication protocol between the programming and the runtime system. With Service Pack 21, it has been delivered and can be used. The final release, which also includes convenient editing of the gateway settings, will be released with Service Pack 22 next year. You can use Layer 2 communication with CAN-FD in your application. However, there are currently no plans to support FD in our CAN-Open or J1939 solution. A major development topic in this area is the possibility of offering online change for devices and device settings. This means that devices can be added, deleted, or their settings changed without having to completely restart the application. This requires some profound changes in the device concept and will be available with Service Pack 22. From this point on, you will be able to implement your own I/O drivers so that they are online change capable. We will do this gradually for our Fieldbus implementations. First, it is planned for Profinet and then for Modbus. Please note that this feature will require a new CODESYS Online Change Configuration license. As mentioned just now, the next major Profinet version in 2026 will support this new online change function. In this version, we want to provide a topology editor that gives a graphical overview of the network. In addition to I/O devices, this will also include infrastructure devices such as switches and a representation of the Ethernet ports. It will be possible to perform a network scan in order to build up an initial network map with all the devices found. The states of the devices and connections are displayed in online mode. The automatic generation of a visualization to be integrated into the user interface is also planned. In recent months, there have already been 2 Profinet versions that have implemented a number of improvements. In particular, these are: first, changes to module parameters can be applied without a complete download and restart of the application. Then, it is possible to install multiple versions or variants of a GSDML file. Previously, the vendor ID, device ID, hardware release, and software release were used as IDs, and 2 device descriptions with identical IDs would override each other. Then the diagnostic data and its display have been improved with icons, tooltips, and better pagination. The GSDML import has been improved in the context of secure devices and automatically generates suitable logical devices. In addition, status and control bytes are offered as bit fields, making it easier to recognize and assign the meaning of the individual bits. We have worked very intensively on Modbus. A particular focus was placed on redundancy functionalities. Our Modbus client, formerly it was called Master, can now be used in combination with CODESYS redundancy. The respective Modbus client behaves according to the redundancy status. That means whether the controller is currently active or passive. The I/O data is automatically mirrored from the active to the passive part to enable a smooth switching. We now also support network redundancy. This requires that the server devices are capable of establishing 2 connections to the client. If one of the connections is lost, our client switches to the other. This allows the devices to continue operating even if one of the communication paths fails. You can specify a preferred connection, which is useful if the redundant connection generates costs. The feature can also be combined with CODESYS redundancy. This is shown in the diagram with the additional blue elements. Please note that you need the communication redundancy license for this. A new version of Ethernet IP was released in July with numerous bug fixes and improvements. One highlight is the new network overview in the scanner, which displays all connected adapters and their connections. You can also edit these there. If you select an adapter, the connections are filtered and only those of the adapter are displayed. Now let's move on to EtherCAT. A new version was also released in August. In particular, the following features are worth emphasizing. Performance improvements for complex devices with safety functions have been made. We now support a new I/O link gateway called SIG 300 from SIG. The backoff gateway terminal EL6633, the successor of the discontinued EL6631, can now be operated. There is a new option in auto-config mode to assign fixed addresses to the configured slaves. These addresses then remain unchanged even when devices are added. We also support predefined sync units. If a sync unit name is specified in the ASI file for the device, it is adopted by default. In addition, there have been a number of diagnostics improvements. Finally, a look at future versions if I haven't already mentioned them. EtherCAT will have a new version with improvements in the first half of 2026. The same applies to Ethernet IP. This will ensure that we pass the newly released Conformance Test 22. We also have a new release planned for Modbus, probably first half next year. Still in this year, there will be a version of our EDS import that fixes a specific bug. Thanks a lot.
Hello, my name is Kevin Ketterle and I am responsible for cloud-based engineering. Today I show you the news of CODESYS Go.
As you probably already know, CODESYS Go is a new generation of our programming system. A new project format based on text-based individual files enables easy integration with version management systems such as Git or other existing tool landscapes. In order to make these ideas tangible for you as quickly as possible, we are currently working intensively on various topics. We are redesigning some concepts for configuring Fieldbuses and I/O systems so that the advantages of the new project format are also available for this aspect. These are generic and therefore valid for all Fieldbuses. We would like to realize Modbus as our first specific Fieldbus, not only because it is quite simple to implement in terms of functionality, but also because it has a considerable user space despite its age. CODESYS Go has a modular structure from the outset, that is, the core system and the individual features in the form of extensions are developed independently of each other and released later on. This requires a corresponding architecture, which we call the extension platform. It is essential for PLC developers to be able to monitor and write variable values on the PLC, which is why the corresponding monitoring services are included in our first version. Structured text is undoubtedly the most important programming language in the standard, so it goes without saying that we want to offer as many offline and online functionalities as possible right from the start. But the standard is also attractive because of its graphical programming languages. We started with the ladder diagram and are currently working on its offline functionality. CODESYS Go is essentially a platform-independent web application and has a comprehensive command line interface. This means that CODESYS Go can be run not only on a desktop, but also in a client-server environment, a CI/CD pipeline, or directly on a Linux-based controller. At the beginning of this year, we set ourselves the goal of releasing an initial open beta version by the end of the year. As is often the case in software development, this goal will be a tight one, but quality and conceptual maturity are more important to us than the deadline. This brings me to the roadmap. We will inform you separately when exactly the open beta version will be available. Our plan is to have this beta phase last 2 or 3 years, during which we will add important features such as additional Fieldbus configurators, motion, visualization, additional programming languages, AI integrations, and infrastructure functions. We intend to release each increment in a timely manner. During this beta phase, CODESYS Go will be available free of charge. I would like to mention at that point that we will subsequently introduce a paid license model. This will be an annual subscription model. Nothing will change for customers who are already using the CODESYS Professional Developer Edition, as CODESYS Go will become part of this product bundle. When we enter the production phase, we will follow the release strategy you're already familiar with from CODESYS version 3. Each add-on has its own version cycle, and updates can be downloaded and installed modularly at any time.